Hi, I'm Trankoalaty. Welcome to my channel. Today we're talking about Animorphs, Megamorphs number 1. This is a book that is 231 pages, published in June of 1997. The book is narrated by all of the characters. There is not an animation in the corner, nor a cool picture underneath the cover. Instead, it's just a bunch of hands reaching out for the Allspark. The cover features all the characters with half a face and half an animal face. Jake is a tiger, Cassie is a fly, Marco as a wolf, Rachel as a bear, and Tobias as a hawk. Half hawk, and the other half of him also hawk. Axe seems to be missing from the cover, but that's okay. Maybe that indicates that this is before they met him, but I don't think so. I can actually tell you that's not true after reading the book. The hands reaching out for the Tesseract in the image underneath the cover are kind of strange though, like half human, half animal, not like either really. Under the chapter heading, it indicates who the narrator is. So Jake starts. So the book starts with Jake expositioning about the invasion and the world. He mentions Axe and the 5 members of the Resistance. The way he talks about the Yeerks is like super aggressive, like they are invading parasites, but like he is really hostile towards them and talks about how nobody can be trusted and anybody could be a controller. And it got really dark really quickly and very reminiscent of like Stranger Danger, like trust nobody. But I don't blame him because he has firsthand experience being a controller and he has like family members who are controllers. So like, you know, he should be a little hostile, right? They're all at headquarters. Well, not Axe, and talking about how Rachel is going to spend a couple of days this weekend away at a gymnastics camp, and they're worried because that means that they can't fight this weekend. Or I guess that it means that like she'll be unavailable if they do need to fight. Like I guess they're supposed to pretend to have lives but not actually have them. And just after I typed that, the next line was Cassie saying that they have to have lives. So that's kind of funny. Cassie is having the group help clean cages and stuff, and this one crow has a broken wing, and Tobias is all like prejudiced against it. He's like, he probably got that injury attacking a hawk, and crows are total punks. And like, it's just really strange the way that Tobias hates on other birds when he was like he was a bullied kid as a human. And I have nothing else to note there, but just like, you know, he has this bias against other animals. So there's a lot of exposition happening. Rachel is going out for the weekend for camp, and Jake is going to a pool party at some girl's house, and Marco's jealous because he wasn't invited explicitly. And there's a tidbit about Cassie thinking that Rachel likes Tobias, but it wasn't like stated or anything like that. So actually during this scene, I tried to imagine what it would all actually look like if this was to be made like in the real world. I know there's a TV show, but like, you know, if it was done again with like Rachel looking up at the rafters and speaking to Tobias, she's just talking to a hawk, and then the hawk is just like thinking at her, like it's just silently, and it's just talk like voiceover, you know what I mean? Like it seemed really weird in my brain to see like a realistic image of a bird and then just voiceover for the bird and like a bunch of kids like talking about alien invasions and like talking to animals and stuff. But hey, what are you gonna do? Like, how would you adapt that into a serious thing, you know? Maybe at some point I'll go and look at the show. The last thing of note is that Jake and Cassie have a short talk about how Cassie's having these weird ominous dreams lately, more weird than usual, and something is asking her to choose who's gonna live and who's gonna die, and Jake's just like trying to be reassuring, like, yeah, we all have nightmares. So Rachel, next chapter is Rachel, and she gives some more exposition about some characters and how they got their powers and stuff like that. And Rachel is talking about how she's going to catch the bus to camp, but she wanted to see Tobias first. And she also has a little bit about how her mom thinks she's going to camp for 2 days, and camp thinks she isn't coming because she was like, no, I can't go. So that puts her in a weird position where she's not really expected to be anywhere. And it just reads like really like foreshadowing, and because she just says like, little did I know that would be such an issue, but we don't know why yet. So she goes into the woods before she's supposed to catch the bus and morphs into a bald eagle to go find Tobias before she leaves and like talk to him. Here again, I started thinking they go into the descriptions of morphing so much in this book, all the books, but this one especially. You'll see why. And so here again, I started to think about like, how would this be adapted, and like how would they like animate them morphing? Because it never looks, they never describe it as looking like pleasant, but if you did it unpleasantly visually, wouldn't that turn people off from wanting to watch your show. You know what I mean? So Rachel's flying into the woods. She sees Axe running, like just, running around in the woods like you do. And she starts to dive down to say hi to him and notices a small nest with little baby birds. And all of a sudden she starts getting attacked by the parent birds trying to protect their territory, and they're young. And they injure her and she loses control and hits a tree and like gets knocked out. Obviously, we know she's not going to be trapped as a like bird in this book or die, but like, suspense. But nobody's going to be looking for her for days. So like that could be a problem, right? Marco. Next chapter is Marco. He starts with more character introductions and he's telling Axe about how he wasn't invited to this pool party because the girl specifically avoided inviting him, and Jake and Cassie were invited and Rachel, but she's out of town. And Axe is like, well, why are you upset? And Marco's like, well, she must like me and that's why she didn't invite me. And Axe is confused because he's like, well, why would you avoid people that you like? Here Marco uses the concept of contrastive reduplication that I talked about in my other video, and he says not like. So like when you use a word multiple times in a row to mean something different, it's a fun little linguistics thing that like for some reason sticks up in my brain here. So anyways, this is all just a preamble to Marco asking Axe to help him by going to the party and spying on the girls to see what they say about Marco. And Tobias is helping them for some reason by catching them a live mouse that they can morph into, and he gives it to Marco, and Marco is like trying to bribe Axe with a cure for his itching condition, flea powder. Axe has fleas and Marco's like, I can solve that if you help me. I don't understand why Tobias had to catch a mouse. Like, couldn't they just go into any kind of pet store and find one and just touch it there and not even have to buy it? But whatever. Tobias caught them a mouse so that they could morph. And also, what is this plan? It's revealed that Marco wasn't invited because the last time he was at this girl's pool party, he put a baby Ruth in the pool and said it was a piece of poop. And Marco's like, no, I was 6. And Tobias is like, you were 10. That was like last year. And Marco's coming across as like super immature and weird. Tobias is like, be careful because mice have a lot of predators. And, just be careful. And Marco's like, yeah, you would know about being a predator, Tobias, because, you're a hawk. Tobias is like, even predators have limit. I saw this eagle get mobbed by a bunch of jays and slam into a tree earlier. So like, we're not all safe. That was Rachel, clearly. Jake. Him and Cassie are at the pool enjoying the party because even though Marco wasn't invited, they're going to have like a normal weekend. Well, that was until there was some screaming, and then immediately Jake starts feeling like adrenaline and the rush, and he's looking for danger, and he's like, uh-oh, battle, right? Like, he's looking for a place to morph. He's like the Power Rangers, I guess. But it was actually just a girl screaming because there was 2 mice chasing her, and the mice dodged and chased in a very unusual way, and Cassie and Jake immediately are like, that's Marco, and he probably roped Axe into this, and Jake is upset. So Cassie and Jake start trying to help, like, with the mice thing, and Jake is like under his breath like, oh, if these mice know what's good for them, they better go to Cassie, otherwise someone might kill them like me. And so Marco's like, hey, I heard that in thought speak. Clearly the jig is up, but everybody's like running around, either running from the mice or trying to stomp on them or trying to capture them. And the mice chased the girl into the house. Marco's like, we're in the basement, we're unmorphing, just make sure no one else comes in. And all the people that were chasing just like tripped on the stairs and all caused like a pileup. And that is when there was a big shift in the weather, and it went from really sunny to all of a sudden there's this like weird dust tornado tearing apart the house. Marco! He starts talking about he and Axe morphed and we're gonna go sneak into the party, but first they have to get the mice instincts under control. And Axe is like, animals have instincts for a reason, so like these are really, really strong, so we should be careful. Doesn't amount to anything, but they get it under control. They sneak into the party. They sit under the girl's chair. By the way, the girl, her name is Darlene. It's not going to come up too much after this, but like, so they're under Darlene's chair and it's all just boring girl talk. And Marco's like, she's not even talking about me. And so he just like thinks the word Marco into Darlene's head to spark a conversation. And she's like, what about Marco? And somebody's like, nobody said anything. And she's like, good. What a jerk he is. And like, he thinks he's so funny, and he like put a piece of candy in the pool last time, and like, he's not even funny or cute or anything. And Marco's like, oh, I'll show you, and like ran across her toes to freak her out. And that's what caused all the commotion that we just went over with Jake's chapter. So they all get into, like, Marco and Axe go into the basement while Darlene runs into like the living room or something and sits on the couch to cry. And they're unmorphing in the basement. And as soon as they start doing that, some creatures start tearing the house apart, something with lots of teeth and eyes in weird places, and it sucks up the house like a tornado. And Axe had morphed to human by the time it was revealed, by the time it got to them in the basement. And the creature just saw two kids and then just turned back into a dust cloud and went away. Not entirely sure why. Rachel! So Rachel woke up half unmorphed and with a case of amnesia. Just the classic, you got hit in the head, you don't remember anything anymore. So she figured out that if she concentrated, she could morph farther to human and just kept doing that. Because she woke up as like half bird, half hawk. It was like, I'm a monster! But then like, oh wait, maybe I can like go all the way. And that is when the ominous dust cloud tornado thing was above her. But she finished morphing and it was just watching her. Tobias, he's up there flying around. They didn't ask him to, but he's covering for Axe and Marco so that like no predators try to go after the mice. And he sees this weird dust cloud tearing apart the house and turning into a creature with a whole bunch of eyes and mouths. And he sees Axe and Marco in the basement and all the people at the house are all terrified. Then he just sees it fly away. It turns into a whole bunch of particles of dust or something and just flies away towards the forest. So it's clearly not being directed by like wind, like a proper tornado would be. So at this point, I'm like, there's a creature that's attracted to morphing or morphed things, but why, right? Rachel! She is unmorphing, and the beast appears and starts chasing her, eating trees and dirt and everything in pursuit of her. And she's finished morphing and ran until she reached a highway and then just runs into traffic. The creature chases her. It got hit by a tractor trailer, or rather, it tore apart a trailer when it was hit. And Rachel fell into a ditch in the median. And when the beast saw her again, it was like, and then just dissolved and flew away. So clearly all the people on the highway accident just there are gonna know something weird is going on, right? And somebody had a camcorder and like recorded a little bit of the scene. And these days I feel like people would have like cell phones at the ready or dash cams, and so like it'd be a lot harder to cover all this up. Rachel's fine. The monster flies away again. She still has amnesia, and I wonder if she'll be able to morph at some point and like cure herself of that. Like, wouldn't her traumatic brain injury just like go away and her memory return? Cassie! Before I get to the next chapter, I wonder if there is an edit of this book where it's all told in one linear, like, well, not linear, it's already linear, but like in one perspective at a time and then cut up. The different characters are going to talk about things differently, but for the most part, it's basically the same. Everyone except Rachel and Tobias are hanging out watching the news at Cassie's house while her parents are out. And the news shows the house and it was destroyed. And a reporter is like, there's a bunch of scared kids. And some said it was a monster, but like, they're just really scared. It was a weird freak tornado thing. And the news also shows the camcorder footage of the freeway. And in the corner of one of the frames is a shot of Rachel. And everyone's like, well, that's weird. Like, it was after Marco and Axe, and then Rachel is here and it's chasing her, but like she's in her morphing outfit so that they know she was morphing at some point recently. Axe says he's never seen anything like this. And Cassie calls Rachel's house like, hey, is Rachel home? And they're like, Rachel's at camp. And she's like, oh, right. Weird. And so they're like, Rachel's not at home and Rachel's clearly not at camp. Where is she? Rachel! She's wandering the woods. And she doesn't remember details about herself, just that she's being hunted by something. She doesn't know if it's after her specifically, but she assumes so. And she also thinks she's like a freak because she knows she's a human. She's not supposed to be like a half of a bird or anything. And she finds this shack, and there was some woman who like starts talking to her, and she's like, if you want to return it, you need a receipt. And Rachel's like, whatever, like strange. And so they went into the shack, and the lady's like, this is the store. And Rachel's like, well, I'll look for some shoes. And the shack has just a whole bunch of clothing in it that this like woman has been bringing to it. And Rachel's like, okay, maybe I can find a pair of shoes. And she offered the woman a piece of bark. And she's like, here's my credit card. Rachel's looking around for shoes. And the woman asked Rachel if she was one of them. And Rachel's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she's like, the things that live in your head. And like, this must be the woman who was freed from the Yerk pool in the first book. And it is. And so Rachel's distracted looking at looking for shoes, and the woman pulls a lever, and Rachel falls into a hole in the floor, and the woman starts talking about Yerks and her kids and her husband, and she's just like muttering all this stuff to herself. And Rachel's like, I have no idea what's going on, but she has like a vague idea that she should know what's going on, but like now she's trapped under the shack and nobody knows where she is. Very suspenseful. Jake and Marco are going to the woods where they saw the news was like reporting from, and Tobias meets them nearby. Axe is on the way still, and Tobias says there's no signs of anybody except for this crazy old lady in her shack. Their plan is to use some wolf morphs and use a sense of smell to find Rachel, and wolves wouldn't look out of place in the woods. And while they're morphing, Tobias is like, big dust cloud monster coming. Cut to Rachel. Rachel's trying to reason with the woman and having flashbacks of fights and the Yerk pool and everything like that. And the woman sets fire to the cabin. Well, the shack. And she's like, I'm not going back. And she just like sets it on fire. And Rachel's panicking and instinctually, I guess, starts morphing into a bear. Like, she doesn't know who she is or what she can do, but she knows she needs to escape. And so she starts morphing into a bear because she knows she needs like power. But like, I thought they had to actually focus on what they were going to morph into. So at this point, I noted that I do not like how often they are switching up between the characters. It makes the story feel like really small, or like the chapters are really small and I'm taking lots of notes at this point. And like maybe they're stretching it out or something. I don't know, but I'm not vibing with it very well. Marco! Jake and Marco finish morphing into wolves, and the monster starts chasing them through the forest and destroying trees in its wake, and it's like tearing a 50-foot wide path. But the trees are slowing it down, so like they can keep ahead of it a little bit. But they're running towards a clearing, Tobias says. And before they could get there, they smell smoke and fire in the woods, and they can hear somebody crying and screaming. And then all of a sudden, the monster just stops chasing them and starts going off towards the fire instead. So it's like they're playing musical morphs with this thing, but not intentionally at this point. Rachel! She's morphed into a bear and breaks out of her burning prison just in time. And she sees flashes of her previous fights as a bear, but still doesn't know what any of it means. She wonders if she's crazy, like the woman who just burnt down the shack. And then the monster shows up. And I wonder, are the Yerks, like, if the Yerks are seeing this thing, like, do they know what it is? Does this mean that the Visser can't morph while there's a monster here? And are, like, they tracking it from space or anything, you know? And, like, all of this is on the same day, by the way, because this is supposed to be Saturday, Sunday, where Rachel's, like, out at camp. So this is all on a single Saturday. It's a lot of things happening in one day in this book. So Rachel, she doesn't know who she is, but she's like, I'm a bear. I'm going to fight you. The bear doesn't afraid of anything. And then Axe shows up and is like, Rachel, is that you? And Rachel's like, am I Rachel? And then the beast attacks. Then the beast attacks them. And it's interesting that Axe hasn't had a... I found it interesting that Axe hasn't had a chapter yet, but everyone else did. And like, we never actually get to hear how his mind works or thinks. And then the next chapter is Axe. He starts by recapping how he joined the Animorphs and they saved him, and he's going to avenge his brother, Prince Elfangor. He helped Marco because even though Marco is smart, he's afflicted with sense of humor, which gets him into trouble. And he says the others look at him as like all-knowing and stuff, but like he doesn't know everything. And he ran towards the smoke, assuming that the beast was after him, and he didn't want to lead it to where he knew Marco and Jake were going to be scouting things out. So he's like, well, maybe the smoke and fire will like obscure me and the beast won't know I'm there. So he picks up where Rachel left off, and Rachel is a bear about to fight this beast, and she swipes at it with one of her bear paws and is left with just a bear arm, no more paw. And Axe is like, run, you can't fight this thing. And instead she swipes with her other paw. And this time she barely has an arm left. And so Axe is like, well, the bear is like a really offensive morph. It's like the best one we've got. So I don't even think that I'm very useful here, even with like my tail or anything. He decides he can't help. He could just run, but maybe he can follow the beast if he morphs to a bird. And Rachel is like getting engulfed by the beast at the same as this is happening. And so he starts morphing, and immediately the monster just like leaves Rachel alone and starts rushing at him. And that is when he figured out that it is attracted to morphing. And the beast wasn't eating Rachel, it was wrapping her up like a cocoon or something. But all the tendrils just dissolved and rejoins the dust and starts attacking Axe. So Rachel's fine. Barely. And Axe unmorphs as the beast wraps him up and was lifting him away. And he knew immediately, he's like, oh no, this is taking me to the Visser. But he doesn't tell us that yet. Instead, we cut to Jake and Marco are playing detective and recreating the scene at the burnt down shack. There's blood and paws and smells and tracks. And they piece together that Rachel is the barefoot tracks and the bear tracks. And that smell and the other tracks, those are Axe. Tobias says that there's tracks leading this way, but only the hind legs of a bear. So they're like, okay, Rachel's alive, but really injured. And Axe, where's he? His tracks and scent just stop right here. So they know Rachel made it to a stream nearby. That's as far as the tracks went. And they're going to go like try to find her there and pick up the trail there. They only have a little bit of daylight time left, and they need to check in with their parents and stuff. And Tobias is like, I'll keep looking, and we'll all come back tonight and see if we can figure anything out. They assume it's the Yeerks, but they don't know that for sure. And they're like, well, if it knows to go after us, why isn't it like just capturing us when we're at home or something? Cassie. So Cassie's at the mall. She's been trying to figure out where Rachel might go while Jake and Marco went to the woods to like try to see if she's still there. And so she's like searching all the places she knows Rachel would go and hang out, and obviously nothing is like she's not there. But she's like, maybe Jake doesn't want me in the woods with them because, you know, he's a sexist and he thinks I'm losing it because of my weird dream that I told him about. But honestly, she's like a little bit relieved to have like the light task of like finding out if Rachel's at any of her known places. She sees Assistant Principal Chapman, AP Chapman, and decides that if anybody knows anything about this thing, the Yeerks would, and she's gonna like spy on him. So she sneaks into an employee bathroom at the back of the store and morphs into a fly, and she's gonna like cling to AP Chapman and like see if he says anything about it while she's on him, I guess. And so she hides her clothes in the garbage, morphs, and goes and starts to find Chapman. Axe. I didn't think we'd be getting back to him so fast, but here we are. The beast has carried him to Visser 3's blade ship and just dropped him into an opening in it. And Axe is surrounded by 10 Hork-Bajir, and the Drakon beams are leveled at Axe, and Visser 3 is gloating, and he's like, aha, my first captive. Visser says that he's named this thing Velik, which is Yeerk for pet. And it was a creature that they found on the gas giant with the rings in this solar system. Saturn, I think. Visser is like, yeah, so you are an Andalite. My advisors were like, maybe there's some humans. And Axe is all like, Yeerk scum, my uncles will get you. Axe isn't Southern. Axe is probably like not Southern at all. What's the opposite of Southern? I don't know. And so Axe is like, Yeerk scum. No, that's still Southern. Axe is all like, Yeerk scum, my uncles will get you. You know, to like play the part and throw off the Visser and stuff, because he just said like, oh no, you're totally Andalites, not humans. Throughout the book, they always reference the other plots in ways that like give just enough context to know what's going on, just in case you didn't happen to read them. Very helpful. And Axe is like, how did you make this dust your like controller? There's no brain or anything, right? And Visser is like, oh, I can exposit that to you. It starts telling him how it's not really an intelligent creature. It's more like a bunch of particles that sense energy and eat it. And they lost a lot of taxons in Hork-Bajir before they could figure out how to like reprogram it to look for morphing energy instead. And so Visser says he feeds it with energy from the ship and programmed it to detect energy from morphing, but not to eat that energy, just to like bring it to him. He tells his guards to put Axe in a cell and feed the beast and release it back to find the others. Axe is like, I didn't strike at my brother's killer when I had the chance. I'm a failure. And like feels like he should have been brave enough, even though that would have totally not worked and like been certain death. Back to Cassie. Cassie is spying on AP Chapman, but he's not doing anything. And then he starts meeting with two other people, and they start walking and talking, because I guess that's how you make momentum or something. So they start walking and talking, and they're talking about how silly it is to have to communicate like this, like secret spy novels, but they can't use their normal communications because of the antics of Visser 1 sabotaging. And they're like, we don't know how far Visser 1's like power is going. Of course, they can't prove Visser 1 was doing anything, but like they totally know it. And so they give a whole ton of exposition about how one of them is on the police force, but only 10% of the police force is controllers. And the other one is for the newspaper, and they're meant to be giving cover stories for the weird monster. And they're like, we're supposed to say it's a tornado and keep this thing under wraps. And lots of people are seeing this thing, and like, you know, it's going to be really hard to do that. And they're also talking about how Visser 3 is rationing Kandrona because of the destruction of it in the last book, because of the destruction of the Kandrona thing in the last book. If they don't succeed in capturing the rogues soon, he might get demoted to Visser 4 or even 5. If that happens, you better just like, you know, you better take care of yourself before the Visser gets to you, because like it's not going to be good. Or if he's already rationing like the sustenance that they need, it's going to get way worse if he gets demoted. Can the Yeerks just like switch loyalty and be like, no, I'm going to be loyal to Visser 1 now? And like, but whatever. They're meant to stick to this weird tornado story, and anyone who disagrees, kill him or turn him into a controller. And Cassie doesn't learn anything about Rachel, but she learns about, you know, the monster that they're up against. Rachel! She wanders into the stream and just sits in the water and morphs back to human. And again, I thought they had to focus on themselves to morph, but like, she doesn't even know what she looks like or who she is, but she can morph back to herself just by like knowing she's Rachel, I guess. So she morphs and her body is renewed, because that's how it works. She's whole again. Except for her brain, except for her memories. So I guess not quite. I feel like there shouldn't be any brain injury, and so she should totally have her memories again. But so every time it's Rachel's turn to like narrate, she asks a lot of questions like, why is this? Or what is this? And who am I? And like has flashes of memories, but like doesn't know what any of it means. So she just decides to walk along the stream because she figures it'll lead her to civilization. Marco! Everyone's at headquarters, except for Axe and Rachel. Cassie catches them up on what she heard AP Chapman stating, and Tobias says there was no signs of bears, Rachel's, or Axe's. And they're all trying to figure out what is going on and why the beast would stop attacking them when it had them, and why it would target them or how. And eventually they realize that someone was morphing all the times that it showed up, but they're still confused why it would leave Axe and Marco when it had them earlier. And so am I. But they eventually figured out it's like a T-Rex. It hunts by movement and like morphing energy, and just goes after the one that it can sense at the time. And I wonder if they can like tire it out somehow. And they decide they can't just fight it, and they need to figure out a way to stop this thing. Cut to Rachel. So she made it to the suburbs, and she found a house with a sold sign on it, and luckily there was water, and so she drank from the outdoor water hose hookup and drank some water. Found one of the windows was open or unlocked, and sneaks her way inside, finds some leftover cookies left by some of the like renovators, and falls asleep on the carpet, and has a whole bunch of nightmares about like jumbled up scenes and pieces from the last book, them being ants and fighting the Yeerks and her being a cat. And she wakes up and she still doesn't know anything. She wakes up, the police are banging on the door, and they're like, somebody called the cops, the neighbors know somebody's in there, come on out. Rachel doesn't know much, but she knows not to trust the cops. And so she decides like, okay, I'll come out. And like, she doesn't know what she's going to morph into. She's like, maybe an ant. I saw an ant in my dream, but like, no, not an ant. So whatever like memories she doesn't have, she knows not to do an ant. She's like, okay, I'm going to be an elephant, because I saw that in my dreams too. She also was like, maybe I could do the bear again, but she doesn't know if the bear, since it was super injured, if it would be injured if she morphs into a bear again. So she decides to morph into an elephant. Cut to Jake. Jake and Marco are leaving Cassie's. It's like 9 o'clock at night, and Tobias is still flying around. I am not sure if this is like right after the meeting that they just had or what, but they're on their bikes and they're about to leave, and Tobias being there makes me assume that like this is just after the meeting or something. And they happen to look up and see like a cloud of dust going across the moon, and it's just crazy luck that they happened to be looking that direction. The moon was out, they were between the dust cloud was between the moon and them, but hey, whatever. They figure that's the monster, the Vilik, going for somebody. And they figure it must be going for Rachel or Axe because everyone else is over here still. And they're like, we need to distract it and play Keep Away Morph Edition so that it doesn't go into the suburbs and like wreak havoc there. But they can't morph at Cassie's house without drawing it to Cassie's house either. So Marco suggests that they borrow Cassie's dad's truck. Rachel! She was not quite finished morphing to elephant, but she did not have a lot of time because the Valik did find her and started tearing the house apart. So Rachel runs out the house, starts running through the yards and stomping yards and making noise and trampling gardens. Just a big nightmare for any HOA. And the beast is also tearing up everything in its path while it pursues her. And the cops, well, they're shooting at things. I don't know what, but it's just kind of their thing. We don't know if they were shooting at Rachel or at the tornado. It wasn't elaborated, and honestly, saying that out loud, hard to say. So she finishes morphing while she's running, but realizes like an elephant isn't going to outrun this thing, and she didn't want to put other people in harm's way, so she just stops and lets the beast like catch her. Instead of killing her, it starts wrapping her up like it did to Axe, and it tries to carry her away, but it was just too heavy. And then she hears a truck. Cut to Marco. Marco is driving the truck, and Cassie and Jake are just screaming, and it's just like a really funny like cut to this scene. And I mean, I would also be terrified if a random 11-year-old was driving a vehicle, but he's really, really bad at it and hitting like every trash can. He's got to, because they're not called trash cans. They see Rachel getting wrapped up by the beast, and it's trying to carry her away. And so Jake is like, I'm going to morph into a tiger to like draw it away. And the beast left Rachel, and Cassie says she's going to go to Rachel. And so Jake gets into the back of the truck. Marco starts speeding in the other direction while they're being chased, and Cassie's like going to run towards Rachel. Jake is dragging out the morph as long as he can, like, you know, taking his time so that Marco can drive them down the highway at 70 miles an hour, and the beast is chasing them. I guess Marco didn't get much better at driving, but the truck doesn't go faster. And Marco is like, I'm gonna go off-road. It's like, is that gonna make you go faster? I feel like the truck would go faster on pavement than off-road, but whatever. So he starts like driving into the trees, and Jake jumps out and is like, give me 5 minutes and you start morphing. He finishes morphing into a tiger, and the beast is like coming at him, and he just starts running at the beast, and it's like jumps at it and does some like acrobatics and dives under it instead, and realizes that the beast takes a few seconds to turn around. But I don't know why, because Visser 3 said that it was like a whole bunch of particles that formed this thing. So wouldn't it be just like the Terminator and just kind of like shloop and invert and like turn around immediately? Why would it need to turn around like real slow like? Jake knows that the tiger can't outrun this thing because tigers are not built for endurance, but like he doesn't need to. He just needs to be fast enough to like give a few minutes for Marco to start morphing or whatever. And so his plan is to like try to wear this thing out by having it chase them while they're morphing in different things. And they don't even know if this thing tires out or not though. So anyways, he climbs up, like he's getting tired. So he's like, you know, the beast is chasing him. He's getting tired. He runs up a tree, and the monster just starts eating it like Pac-Man, deep throating that wood. And Jake leaps off the tree into the darkness. Cut to Rachel. She sees the truck and the monster leaving, and she sees Cassie. She has more memory flashes, but not enough to piece things together. And the cops have taken off after the truck for some reason, and all sorts of neighbors are like watching from their windows. And Cassie's all like, Rachel, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Rachie? And Rachie's like, Rachie? And Rachel's like, who are you? What am I? And like, so her and Cassie are like sharing a whole bunch of dialogue here, but like, and Cassie's like, you're my friend and stuff like this. And Rachel's like, okay, I'm gonna trust you. Tell me what to do. And I don't know why, if I was just in a really weird spot when I was reading this, but like, I almost started crying here. Just having Rachel just trust Cassie and be like, I trust you, tell me what to do. And like, I don't know, something about Rachel having this like classic case of convenient fictional amnesia and just being like, yes, I trust you. You're my friend. Somehow I know this. It's just like, I don't know. It got to me. Cut to Axe. Axe says that the Yeerks put him in a box, but not just any box, a Ramonite box that is seamless. And he was in there for hours just thinking about how he was so dishonorable because he didn't avenge his brother. And like, that's the custom of their people. You got to get vengeance if you have the chance. I'm just like, how far do you got to go to get vengeance? Like, if somebody kills your brother and then you killed them and then their brother kills you and then your sister kills them, and that, like, how deep does this go until there's only like one family person remaining? Where does it end is all I'm saying. He's thinking all this over, and one of the walls opens up because Ramonite, whatever, this metal is one that can transform and open and close and be realigned, and which is like cool, but like it must be super abundant since they're making so much stuff from it, like their entire ships and stuff is what it seems like. And it also might have like, it must have like be really convenient for like all the properties that it has for them to make all that stuff from it. He's on the bridge of the blade ship, and there's Taxons to the left of him and Hork-Bajir to the right, and here he is stuck on the blade ship with Visser 3. But he describes the Hork-Bajir as peaceful until the Yeerks got there, and here again he describes the Taxons as evil, but now with Yeerk intelligence, because the Taxons are willing hosts. And I'm just like, what makes the Taxons evil, though? Like, do they enjoy causing harm? Are they evil because they've chosen to ally with the Yeerks? They were evil before they were with the Yeerks, so like, what does that mean? Visser is here taunting Axe, and they have a hologram visual of the Valik on a target, and Axe is soon going to have company. And they're watching the tiger scene with Jake. But just as he's about to be done for, the Valik stops and just goes towards another target, as is the plan. And Visser's like big mad, and he's like, what is this? And one of the controllers is like, well, one of the human controllers is like, well, as you know, we don't really understand this thing, but we do know that like maybe it just sensed another morph. Like, that's what we programmed it to do. And Visser's like, fine, deploy both bug fighters and keep a visual on the Valik. And I was just like, both bug fighters? Do they only have two? And a Taxon is like, it's going to be difficult keeping up with the Valik. It's like a bunch of dust. And Visser 3 kills him, just slashes him in two, and then asks if anyone else thinks it's going to be too difficult. And it's like, darn, the Yeerk controllers sure are disposable. Visser says he knows that they can't keep morphing forever. Like, they're going to get tired eventually. So they're just going to capture or kill them by following along with the bug fighters either way. Cut to Marco. Marco, he's driving the truck. He comes out of the trees on the other side of the suburbs that they started at, and he starts morphing into a gorilla so that he can keep driving. Cut to Rachel. Like, seriously, that chapter was like one page. The story just feels so just disjointed because of that. But it's also sort of, I guess, like how TV and movies are set up a little bit. Like, you get a little bit from multiple perspectives. You don't spend like all your time on one scene. And I like it when TV does it, but I'm not sure I like it when it's this book. However, I do enjoy very, very much when TV or movies have things like in the background, and then they show it from another perspective of like, how did it come to this scene? Anyways, cut to Rachel. Cassie is riding on Rachel's back, and they're running towards the trees away from the houses so that, you know, there's no casualties there. And Cassie, again, all those people were watching out their windows. Aren't they going to be like, yeah, this elephant just picked up this girl and they started walking off into the forest and there was this weird dust storm that like tore apart our neighborhood. I wonder if that's ever going to come up again. Cassie is explaining everything while they're running. You know, we're Animorphs, alien war, we're child soldiers, all that stuff. And Rachel's remembering little fragments here and there. And Cassie is like, the plan is we're going to morph every 5 minutes to like wear this thing out, if it wears out. And Rachel says that Cassie and her should be together because like it couldn't lift Rachel as an elephant. So maybe it won't be able to separate them when Cassie morphs and won't be able to carry Cassie away. And so Cassie starts morphing into squirrel. Cut to Marco. He's still morphing and driving, and the beast is in pursuit. He's still morphing to gorilla and driving as fast as he can. The beast is in pursuit. And then he sees an elephant. I guess they should have coordinated that better. He crashes into the elephant. The truck goes flying and like turns over. Marco's gorilla enough that he survives and gets flung from the truck. The elephant goes flying as much as an elephant does. And the Valik passes him over and goes towards Rachel. Probably because Cassie started to morph into squirrel, which again, why is she morphing if it's Marco's turn to morph? Shouldn't they have coordinated this better? Anyways, While this is all happening, the bug fighters have arrived and start firing Dracon beams at everyone. Cassie is morphing. She sees the bug fighters that have hit Rachel and burned her pretty badly. And the truck also hit Rachel. The truck flipped over. Rachel's laying on the ground injured. Marco was flung and he's injured. And Cassie's half morphed on the ground with the bug fighters overhead. And the Valik is there too. And this is just like her dream. Who's she gonna choose? Who will the monster take? Because they all like need to morph to live. But when they do, they're gonna get taken. I wonder if the Valik could sense Axe morphing. Like, at this point, I take a note of like, how far can this thing sense morphs? Could Axe morph and like draw it to Visser's ship and get the ship torn apart? Cut to Axe. Axe is watching this whole scene with the elephant and the truck and all that on like the hologram. And the Valik had taken somebody and was heading back. But it was obscured. We don't know who it's taken. And he wonders if it's Rachel. But it's like, one, he can see the elephant. He knows it's not Rachel. Two, he's like, well, probably Cassie. But also, Marco was on the ground, so like, it could have been him. We don't know who it is. And the Visser is like, have the bug fighters keep watch, capture the elephant until it unmorphs. So clearly the elephant is still there. And the other controllers are like, maybe we should send some human controllers. That would be a little less I'm sorry, if I'm going to do this voice. Maybe we should send some human controllers. That would be a little less conspicuous. And he's like, fine. Send some of the human controllers. Either way, they're going to have people on the way. They're going to capture these rogues. And Visser's like, I'm going to my quarters, reseal the Andalite's cage. And Axe, so he's back in his cage, like nothing to see here. And Axe feels a little bite on his arm, and he realizes he still has fleas. And Jake morphed into a flea once, so he could morph into one too. I'm just like, well, what happens to all the fleas that are on him when he morphs? Are there going to be a lot of fleas on the ground, or are they just going to disappear? But also, this is why you don't leave your captor in a room where you can't see into it. Like, what is this, James Bond? He had an ant and he had a fly, but fleas are a lot smaller. And Andalites, and maybe Yeerks, don't have that many small things, so maybe they won't expect this, right? But also, this is the kind of thing that pulls me out of like media when I'm consuming it, by the way, of like, well, how did the Andalites evolve if there weren't smaller creatures building up like a chain of things, an ecosystem from small to big? You know what I mean? Like, you don't just arrive at Andalites. You must have like a series of small things building to larger things and larger things. You know what I mean? So anyways, Axe morphs into a flea and waits. I guess all those other fleas that were on him did disappear or something. So the Visser returns and he's like, undim the Andalite's cage so he can see this. He sees it's empty and starts freaking out. He's like, where is he? That's my best Batman impression. And so the controllers are like, oh, let's open up the cage and go inside and see. And immediately he's like, no, you idiots, close the cage. But Axe had already jumped and landed on somebody and got a ride out of the cage. And also, whoever he got a ride out on is dead now. He can sense that it's dead because like the flea is like, well, blood isn't running anymore. So the Visser had killed whatever he rode out on. Cut to Marco. Marco is the one who was brought to the ship. And he's surrounded the same way that Axe was. And he sees a dead Hork-Bajir in the corner. And Visser telling people to get the bioscanners because clearly Axe just morphed into something really small. He didn't disappear. And Axe starts thought-speaking to Marco and Marco to Axe. And he's like, I jumped onto Visser, actually. And Visser is like taunting Marco and telling Marco, he's like, unmorph from this ridiculous form. And Marco does not respond because they don't want to tip off that they're humans. So the Yeerks still don't know that they're not Andalites. Axe is like, I'm on Visser, I'm a flea, I've got a plan. And he tells Marco that, do you see all these consoles around you that are like square touch pads? And Marco's like, yeah. He's like, they're just like computers. You just got to touch one and they work on thoughts. They're like telepathic touch screens. I need you to get to one and open the hatch. Just think, open the hatch. And when things get crazy, get to one and do that. And so Axe starts unmorphing and the Valik starts charging at the Visser. In the chaos, Marco gets to a console, thinks, open the hatch, and he's like, oh, we're not in space, we're in the atmosphere. So they didn't get sucked into space. And the only other thing of note is that the Visser demanded that people get him water when the Valik attacks. So I guess its weakness is the same as Elfie's from Wicked. or the aliens from Signs, if you will, or the Sandman from Spider-Man, I guess. So it's kind of like a good thing it never attacked during a rainstorm, although this is in the same day, so it was a nice day out. Cut to Axe. He's morphing as slow as he can so that the Valik goes after the Visser, and he's working, and it's working. It's like trying to pick up the Visser while it picks up Axe. And Marco says, okay, the hatch is open, now what? And Axe is like, the Visser is thirsty for water. That's kind of weird. I had this thought of like, would the Yeerks and Andalites, for that matter, really call things the same as we do in English? Like, would they really call it water? But I guess maybe these are all written like after the fact and they get translated to English or something. Yeah, I'm going with that. So Axe morphs back into Flea instead of unmorphing at all and jumps. And now that the hatch is open, he jumps and like gets caught up in the Valik's dust. And one of the particles hits him and gets stuck on him. And he can see, even though the flea can't see very good, he can see from this distance that it's roughly the size of a flea. It doesn't have any eyes. It has antenna with like radio antennas on the end of it. Metal knives or something that like cut things up to consume the energy or something. And then the sprinklers come on and everything is getting watered down and he gets like knocked to the floor. And I guess that makes the Valik powerless, or at least the particles can't form while they're wet. And so Axe jumps onto Marco, and Marco climbs and jumps out the open hatch. All the chaos, he could do that. But now they're falling through the sky. It's fine. I've never been skydiving, but I bet you it lasts for like a long time. You probably can fall for quite a while, right? Rachel, her leg was broken by the truck, and she went flying as far as an elephant will, and she hit her head again. And this gives her a case of reverse amnesia, I guess. And so, like, you know how you get like one concussion that's bad and then you get another concussion to reverse it. Don't do that. I'm pretty sure that they're compounding. They don't cancel each other out. So don't do that. Cassie says that they took Marco and she didn't do anything. And Rachel is like, well, I'm busted. We need to unmorph. And so they both do that. And they mention that the bug fighters are circling overhead. And that's definitely going to show the Yeerks who they are, right? I mean, the Yeerks have a visual, right? And so, like, they're going to see that they're human. But also, wouldn't the Yeerks have, like, at this point, they're spacefaring? Don't they have, like, facial recognition technology? Like, we have that, and we don't go to, like, interstellar travel or anything. So, like, why come the Yeerks? And also, why come the Yeerks don't have, like, AI and things like that? But we have that. Maybe we're too busy building crap like AI, and they're building interplanetary ships. Just different priorities. Anyways, the bug fighters apparently can't just hover and are like doing circling around. And in that time, Cassie and Rachel are like, well, time to morph again. It's going to be exhausting, but we can't have our cover blown. So I guess the Yeerks did stop watching them on whatever like hologram they were watching them with before. So they morph into owls as the police and bug fighters are closing in. And as they're trying to fly away, some Hork-Bajir jump down to try to like capture them. And they just are like, well, we got to charge at them. We don't have enough time to like turn. And Jake comes out of nowhere, tackles one, and the other gets distracted because of that, and they all run and fly away. Marco! So he's a gorilla skydiving without a parachute, and he's freaking out, and Axe is like, just morph into a bird. Assuming there's time, but okay, try that. And here, they expand that you have to return to your original form. You can't just morph from one thing to the next. You need to go back to your original form first. Is he gonna have time to morph? Well, unmorph and then morph before hitting the ground? They said it takes minutes each way. Of course, he makes it just in time, morphs into a bird. The weird thing, though, is that Axe is also a bird. Why did Axe unmorph? All he had to do was wait and keep clinging as a flea onto a bird. But whatever, he unmorphed and also morphed into a bird in that same time. But for Axe, that's like 3 morphs in such a short time. You know, like, what the heck? Well, actually, for both of them, that's 3 morphs in such a short time. They gotta be exhausted, right? Cut to Jake. Yada yada. Jake went home, gets home around midnight. Of course, he gets grounded. He gets in trouble. Rachel and Cassie went to Cassie's house because Rachel would have to explain why she's not at camp. Rachel's also like getting a lot of her memory back, but not all of it. And so like maybe if she spends some time with Cassie, you know, she'll get the rest of it. Why go to a hospital for traumatic brain injury? No, friendship is the best medicine. So So Jake fell asleep thinking how, like, it's all over. We survived, but Marco and Axe are already gone, and they didn't even take the beast down. And so, like, it's just a matter of time. And all of a sudden, he just passes out. And Marco scares him awake at 10 a.m. And Jake's like, oh my God, you're alive. And Marco's like, yep, we're all alive. And we're just waiting for you to get so that we can get together at headquarters. But Jake is grounded. But Marco's like, I convinced your dad that if you clean the whole garage, you can go out for a little bit. And your mom's not home. So, like, you know, just between your dad and you. Jake is going to clean on his own and meet everyone in a few hours. And they're going to plan a counterattack. But Jake is in the dark as to, like, what any of that means. And so are we at this point. Cassie! Tobias is getting filled in, and he's like, oh my God, all of this happened while I was sleeping. And Cassie's feeling guilty and like a coward because she let Marco get taken. And they recap all that they know. Tiny swarm of insect type things, eats ship energy, chases morph energy, water is its weakness, it can't lift elephants. And Cassie says, I have a plan, but I have to be the one to execute it because I let Marco get taken. And they're all like, no. But, like, eventually they're like, okay, fine. And they all take off to go to the beach. Cut to Tobias. Tobias is sad that he missed all the action, but at least he gets to be a part of Cassie's plan. He's out over the ocean whale watching, and he finds one, goes back to the beach and tells Cassie, I found one, it's a couple miles out. Cassie! They're all walking along the beach waiting for Tobias to tell them that there's a whale, and they're all trying to convince Cassie, like, you don't have to do this, but she's like, I'm the one who can morph the fastest, and this plan requires 3 morphs, 6 changes. I'm the best one suited for this. And they all are like, okay, but we'll be backup. And Axe has to sit this out because he's an alien. You can't, like, have an alien on the beach. And they all get into the water, out of sight, and morph to dolphin. And the leak comes, but it won't get close to them. And so they find the whale, and the whale and the dolphin have that strange telepathic communication that they have. And Cassie is like, great one, don't dive. And so she unmorphs, gets the whale form, and the rest of them, like, hold her up, and she acquires the whale. Then the whale leaves. And the Valik is just sitting there waiting. And Tobias is flying above, waiting. Cut to Tobias. So Tobias must have gotten into the water at some point or got close. And, like, Cassie had morphed into a cockroach and climbed onto him. The others are playing, like, partial morphs and keeping the Valik distracted near the surface of the water. And I think the plan is Cassie's going to unmorph. And then when the thing takes her, morph into a whale and drag it to the ocean. And Tobias is getting tired because hawks aren't known for flying over the ocean. But, like, he's getting him as high as he can. He's like, all right, this is high as we can go. It's time. And Cassie jumps off, starts unmorphing, and the Valik comes for her. So she unmorphs, the Valik gets her, and she starts morphing again. And she's really tired, but she's like, I gotta do this. As the beast, it's slowing her down, and then eventually starts coming down with her. And she's like, I'm just so tired. I don't know if I can make it, but, like, I gotta try. And then, like, failing, trailing off. And then we cut to Rachel. Rachel talks about how Cassie's so great for being able to morph so much. And are they gonna make it? And then the Valik can't carry Cassie and can't get off of her in time. And she hits the water. And the Valik is destroyed. And Cassie feels great. And she's like, everything is so good. And we won this time. And Cassie starts singing whale song. And they're like, what is that? What are you singing? And she's like, it's not really words. It's just, like, the idea of hope. And that's how the book ends. That's the end of the book. My thoughts. I really hated the format of this book. And there's 3 more of these things. I guess I'll start with the story. It was okay. I do wonder if there's other Valik on Saturn and they just do this all again. But let's assume that there's not. Like, the Yeerks captured all of the dust that was the Valik, I guess. They also didn't really say why water would destroy it, but I guess it's kind of like I said, the Sandman in Spider-Man 3. Like, it just can't form itself when it's, like, being, like, hit with water or something. But also, like, when the ocean's gone, the Valik will rise again. I think that's a ways off, so I think they're okay. Maybe it'll get, like, swept off slowly by currents or, like, evaporated or something. So, like, who knows? Maybe it could reform earlier, right? The story itself was not that long of a, like, the story didn't take that long in universe. It was like 1-2 days worth of events. I guess that's not too unusual, but the disjointed way that it was told made it seem really long. And the Yeerks themselves weren't, like, didn't feature a lot in this book, which makes sense because this is like a companion book. If you don't read it, you shouldn't really miss anything over the larger story. It's just the format that got me. The very short chapters, some of them just like a page long, and the bouncing back and forth between characters just felt like a really cheap way to obfuscate what was happening at times. But like I said, that is sort of how some stories are told, and they can be very enjoyable. I just didn't like it in this case. So I guess they did get like a new morph or two, and I wonder if those will come like feature in later books. I did not like the Rachel amnesia stuff. I don't know why. I don't think that traumatic brain injuries cause amnesia that way, usually. Maybe ever. It's just kind of a movie trope. Why wouldn't it be cured by morphing? If your body is restored, your brain is restored, why would you have like a disconnect there? I kind of feel like memories and that are like in your brain. And also, how can she morph if she doesn't have memories? You know what I mean? Like, I did like that the woman who was freed in the first book came back, but also she disappeared again. So like, what happened with her? And I wonder if she got recaptured. And if she did, would that mean that she knows Rachel is like a human and can morph and stuff? I mean, the Yeerks are already bad enough at parsing all that out when they have visuals on things as it is. Like, they should have definitely known all of this. By the end of this book, the Yeerks should have totally known that they were humans. Okay, this book did cover them doing the actual planning, and I think it was a pretty decent plan. Like, they figured out the weaknesses and like all that kind of stuff just came together. It wasn't too silly and obvious, and they just like had tiny little clues that like built up throughout the book. I thought that was pretty nice. I also noted that this is one of the first books that basically the entire thing, I did not remember almost anything in this book. So I wonder if the rest of the books going forward are also going to be like that for me. I know that's not true because there's actually at least 2 plot points that I can remember from different books later in the series. But for the majority of the books going forward, I wonder if I'm actually not going to remember very much. Not my favorite book, but it did have its moments. It was also the longest book that we've done so far, 231 pages, but it also felt like the longest. It took me a very long time to read, but I've been really busy at work and trying to move and like trying to find a new place to move to and stuff like that. So I'm giving myself a little bit of leeway, but it did take me very long to read because I took so many notes that slowed me down a lot. Usually I try to take notes by either immediately after I read a paragraph, and that's where a lot of the like questions come from, of like, since they just said that, I have a question. Or after I finish a chapter, I will recap that chapter in my notes. But in this case, the chapters are very short, and so there's a lot to recap like really quickly. And so that made it feel very long, and it also made the book feel like it was dragging out for me because it took me so long. Let me know if you thought this was a good story or format for these books, or if you just have any comment in general. Let me know your thoughts. I like reading them. I will be moving shortly, and I'm busy with work. I will still be reading the books and working on videos. It's just going to be a little bit slower of a pace for a while. If you've made it this far though, thank you so much for listening. If you like, you can subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next video. It also helps my numbers, which is much appreciated. Until next time, thanks for watching.